In today's tutorial, we're going to be going over how to crochet in the round with two different techniques. At the end of this tutorial, we'll go over the pros and cons of both, and from there you can decide which one you would like to do moving forward. I like to start my work off by creating a magic circle. So I'll go ahead and show you really quickly how I create mine. I wrap my yarn around my two fingers to form an X. Under the first, grab the back loop, and then I make sure I hold my loop down, chain 1, and I'm going to single crochet 6 into the magic circle. So we have our 6 single crochets, and now I'm going to pull my ring shut. Make sure it's nice and tight. Now, there are two ways to work in the round. You can either work by slip stitching into your first stitch, and each row you will slip stitch at the end of each row. And the second way is to work continuously in the round, and that's without slip stitching. You will just go straight into your next stitch. And so right now we're going to go over how to work continuously in the round, because a lot of people have problems with this, especially when it comes to where to place their stitch marker. I created 6 single crochet into my magic circle, so what I'm going to do is put my stitch marker into my last single crochet, so my 6th single crochet, just like that. And now, to increase to the next round, I will place 2 single crochet in each stitch around. 1, 2, 2 single crochet into the same stitch. Now we'll place 2 single crochet into the next stitch. And 2 single crochet in each stitch around. 1. Now, for our last stitch, we will take out the stitch marker. We'll place 2 single crochet into our last stitch. 1, 2. And the second single crochet that we just did is now our last stitch of this round. So we will put the stitch marker back into that last stitch. And now we should have 12 single crochet around because we just increased that round. Whenever you're working in the round, you will need to increase every row until you reach the length that or the circumference that you're looking for. So for round 3, we're going to increase again, and we'll increase by placing 2 single crochet into the first stitch. 1, 2. Now place 1 single crochet into the next stitch. 2 single crochet into the next stitch. 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and continue that same pattern around. So 2 single crochet, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, 1 single crochet. With each round, we'll be increasing 6 times per round. And again, we've reached the last stitch. And so we increased in this stitch, so we'll have 1 single crochet into our last stitch. So we take out our stitch marker, 1 single crochet into the last stitch. Now that is our last stitch of the round, so we will replace our stitch marker to that stitch. Now for round 4, we're going to increase again. So 2 single crochet into the first stitch. I always start my first round with the increase, I always start the first stitch with my increase. With the last round, we increased and then had 1 plain single crochet, increase, plain single crochet. So for this round, round 4, we're going to increase, which is 2 single crochet in 1 stitch, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet into the next 2 stitches. Increase, 2 single crochet in 1 stitch, that's what an increase is, and then single crochet into the next 2 stitches. 2 single crochet, 1 single crochet into the next 2. Now 1 single crochet into the last 2 stitches. So we'll take out our stitch marker and single crochet into the last stitch, and then we'll replace our stitch marker because that is our last stitch of the row. Now that was for row 4. So for row 1 we had 6 single crochet. Row 2 we had 12 single crochet. Row 3 we had 18 single crochet. And for row 4 we'll have 24 single crochet around. So let's go ahead and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So we have 24 single crochet around. It's very important, especially when you're crocheting continuously around, to count your stitches at the end of each row to make sure that you have the correct amount of stitches. Now for row 5, we're going to continue the same pattern. We're going to increase the number of single crochets that we have around by 6. So to start round 5, we will place 2 single crochet or increase into the first stitch. Then we will single crochet 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. Increase into the next stitch. One single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Increase into the next stitch. One single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, and continue the same pattern around. Now we've reached our last single crochet of the round, so we'll take out our stitch marker and single crochet into the last stitch. Now replace. And now you have 5 rounds of single crochet increases. On round 5 we should have 30 stitches around because we added 6 stitches with those increases. If you want to make your circle larger, you will continue to increase every row around until you've reached the desired circumference. But you will continue the same pattern. So for round 6 we would increase and then single crochet 4, because the last round we single crocheted in we had 1 single crochet in the next 3 stitches. So for round 6 we would increase 1 single crochet into the next 4 stitches. Round 7, you would increase, single crochet into the next 5 stitches. Round 8, you would increase and then 1 single crochet into the next 6 stitches, and so on. Now they say this is working in the round, but when you start to do your increases, you'll notice that it kind of starts to form more of a hexagon shape. This is completely normal, and there are ways to get around it by increasing in different sections of your work, but I'm not going to go over that today because it just is going to get too confusing. So right now, this is what most people do. This is what I do. This is the way that you should go. So we have our 5 rounds of single crochet increases, and we have our flat circle. Now I'm going to show you that when you single crochet into each stitch around without increasing, what it starts to turn your work into. So just go ahead, and if you're working along with me, place 1 single crochet into each of your stitches. And you can see I'm about to reach my stitch marker again. So I'm just going to take it out, put my last single crochet in there, and replace my stitch marker again. And I've just finished my first round of plain single crochets, and you can start to see that it's lifting up a little bit right here. It's just the first row, so it's not going to show much of a difference, but you can see that it's starting to turn upwards. And that's what we want, especially when you're making a hat, because then the more it turns, that's when it starts to form that hat shape. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more rows, and then I will show you what it starts to look like. So this is what your work will start to look like after the 3rd row of plain single crochet rows. See how it's starting to tilt up? Now really quick, I wanted to go over that on the tips section of the blog post, I talked about how when you're creating amigurumi, sometimes you might be crocheting your work inside out. Well, I'm going to show you what's happening. So as you're crocheting your plain rounds, your work will start to work upwards like this. What you will need to do is identify that this is the right side of your work. So the inside, the one that's forming the cone, is the right side of your work because this is the work that's facing you. The wrong side looks like this. So if any of your amigurumi looks like this, it's because you forgot to turn your work inside out. And sometimes that happens. I've done that before too, especially in the beginning. So I just wanted to go over that really quick. And I also want to show you that after 3 rows, you can see that it's starting to form more of a cone or hat shape. I'm going to show you one of my monsters that is designed in the same kind of way. And I'll show you what happens when you increase to a certain amount and then work a bunch of plain rows. Now this is one of my monsters from the Mandala Monster collection. The way that I designed him was that he started off working in the round, and then I increased to a certain point, and then once I felt that he was big enough, his head was big enough, I single crocheted plain rows all the way until the end. And so whenever you do these plain rows, it makes more of a cylinder. I just wanted to show you what happens whenever you work a bunch of plain rows and the shapes that you can create by working in the round. Now I'm going to show you how to crochet in the round by slip stitching your ends at the end of each row. So I've already created my magic circle, and I single crocheted 6 into my magic ring and pulled it tight. So to end the first row, we're going to slip stitch into that first stitch. So we'll count six stitches back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is our first stitch, and we're going to slip stitch, which you insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then you pull through the loop on your hook. Okay, so we are done with row number 1 with our 6 single crochets. Now we're going to chain 1. We're going to increase our first round, or our second round. So we will place 2 single crochets into that very first stitch. So it will be right into this stitch. So place 2 single crochets into that stitch. So you can see how we increased in that very first stitch, and now we will increase in each stitch around. Okay, so we've reached the end of our round. Now there are a couple things to know about this method of crocheting in the round. I'm going to show you right here. This stitch here looks like a stitch, but it's not a stitch. That is where you slip stitched into the first stitch of the round. So you will not crochet or place any stitches into that stitch. You know that we're done with the round because we have 12 single crochets around our circle. So what you're going to do is you make sure you have 12, then you skip this fake stitch or slip stitch, and this right here, this is the chain 1 from the beginning of the round. So you will skip the slip stitch, you'll skip the chain 1, and you'll slip stitch into that very first stitch from the round. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on your hook. So now we have 12 single crochets in this row. So this is your 12th stitch, and right here is your slip stitch. So now you will chain 1 to begin round number 3. And now you will place an increase in your very first stitch, which is right here. Increase. One single crochet into the next stitch. 2 single crochet into the next stitch. 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and so on. All right, and we've reached the end of our round. We end with 1 single crochet into the last stitch. Now remember, this stitch is a fake stitch. That's your slip stitch, and this is your chain 1. So you will slip stitch to the very first stitch of the round. And in this row, we should have 18 stitches. Now the increasing in each round is the same as what we just went over with working continuously. So for round 4, you will increase and then 1 single crochet into the next 2 stitches. For round 5, you would increase and then 1 single crochet into the next 3 stitches, and so on, just like we went over before. So I'm going to do a couple more increase rounds, and then I will show you what it starts to look like. This is what it will look like, 7 rows of increases when you're slip stitching at the end of each row. So there are some pros and cons to both of them. The first con you might be able to see without me even telling you is that when you slip stitch at the end of each round, it starts to form a seam that you can clearly see. And if it doesn't bother you, that's completely fine and you can do it that way. But some people don't like seeing this seam here. So that's one of the cons. So here we have the version where we slip stitched. at the end of each round, and this is the version where we worked continuously around. And you can see when you're comparing that this one doesn't have a seam. You don't see a seam here anywhere because you're working continuously. But with this one, you can see the seam. But like I said, there are pros and cons to each. So the con to slip stitching at the end of each round is the seam. The pro to slip stitching at the end of each round is that you don't have to use a stitch marker, and you clearly know when you reach the end of each row. The pro to working continuously in the round is that you don't have that seam and it looks really clean. But the con is that you have to use a stitch marker, and if you lose your place, it can be especially frustrating because you have to go back and either frog your work or you'll have to go back and really try to search where the last stitch of your round is. So those are the pros and cons. You decide what you want to do, and of course the pattern will also tell you how they feel the project should be worked. So now you know how to crochet in the round, both in continuous rounds and by slip stitching at the end of each row. We've gone over the pros and cons of both, and I've showed you what happens whenever you create a bunch of plain rounds. So I hope that this tutorial really helped you learn how to crochet in the round. If you have any questions or if there's something that I missed, feel free to leave a comment below, ask away any questions. I'm here to help. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye!